I wish it need not have happened in my time.
So do I, and so do all who live to see such times, but it is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And already, Frodo, our time is beginning to look black. The enemy is fast becoming very strong. His plans are far from ripe, I think, but they are ripening. We should be very hard put to it. We should be very hard put to it, even if it were not for this dreadful chance. The works of J.R.R. Tolkien have become part of the cultural battlefield, now crystallizing around the release of a new and, in my view, questionable television series which disrespects the memory and legacy of Tolkien. For many, Lord of the Rings carries with it a sacred quality, something that transcends the product which it's being transformed into, and the changes being made in the name of the current day, which need no elaboration. Rather than dwell on the darkness, however, it's more productive for us to gain an understanding of some of the deeper meanings crafted into Tolkien's original tale, whether he was conscious of it, or whether it was purely the work of the Muses. Let us discover what is pagan and what is Christian about this great work that has shaped the landscape of literature in the 20th century and the culture itself. Hi friends, I'm Kevin McLean. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and consider supporting me on Patreon or PayPal. Your support helps me produce videos like this. Much thanks to all of my supporters. The Lord of the Rings is far more than a fantasy novel. It is an elaborately crafted masterpiece, the working of a great Englishman steeped in the lore and legends of Europe. It is a modern work, but it oozes of old thinking, of tradition, belonging, purpose, of people and nations, of good and evil. However, it is not ancient or pre-Christian in spirit. Classics, which are truly pre-Christian, are far removed in more ways than time from the modern world. The morals and worldview of ancient peoples was very different, making it difficult for modern people to understand character motivations. The heroic ideal in most European societies was centered on the great deeds of the warrior, and those deeds were not always what one would consider moral by today's standards. The Lord of the Rings bridges that gap, becoming something of a modern-day Iliad, but with characters and motivations more transparent to the modern mind. The work is a jumble of pagan nostalgia and Christian attitudes. It shares this quality with a great deal of medieval fiction and poetry, inspired by ancient lore and mythology. Though Tolkien studiously avoids talking about God or gods, the presence of God is felt everywhere in the tale. He intended it that way. He expresses God through subtle ways like coincidental happenings and the thoughts and actions of characters themselves, just as in the real world. Gandalf says, "So now, when its master was awake once more, sending out his dark thoughts from Mirkwood, it abandoned Gollum, only to be picked up by the most unlikely person imaginable, Bilbo from the Shire. Behind that, there was something else at work, beyond any design of the ring maker. I can put it no plainer than by saying that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, and not by its maker, in which case you also were meant to have it, and that may be an encouraging thought." Said in other words, it was the will of God that the ring came to Frodo. Though Catholic, Tolkien incorporated pagan archetypes into his tale. Gandalf is quite plainly intended to be Odin, the wide-traveling ancient Germanic god who leads kings and heroes with his advice. Like Odin, Gandalf leads the heroes, guiding them, aiding them with his wisdom and magic. He even undergoes a death and rebirth when he returns as Gandalf the White. He has lived since the ancient days and is known to the various peoples by many different names, such as Mithrandir, Olorin, the Grey Pilgrim. According to the lore, Gandalf began his existence as one of the Ainar, the spirit beings created in the beginning of the world. The greater of these became known as the Valar, the gods, and the lesser, the Maiar, who were their helpers, of whom Gandalf was one. He was a follower of Manwe, a god of the air, perhaps intended akin to Odin, and his wife, Varda. He became one of the 5 Istari, the wizards who were sent by the Valar into Middle-earth in the Third Age in order to counter Sauron. Gandalf acts akin to Mercury as an emissary of the Valar king, Manwe, and the creator god, Eru Ilúvatar. Tolkien had a cosmological conception which can be thought of as influenced by paganism, but which also corresponds roughly to Abrahamic views. The creator god, Eru Ilúvatar, establishes the world through his cosmic music. He first created the Ainar through various parts of his mind. They then aided Eru in establishing the physical world and rule over particular elements. Of them, Manwe is viewed as preeminent, the lord of wind, air, and clouds, and king of the Valar. Ulmor is lord of waters. Aula is lord of smiths and the earth. Orome Aldaron is the lord of forests. Mandos, the lord of death. Tulkas Astaldo is a champion god, and so on. They are all paired with goddesses, or Ainar, who represent the feminine qualities. It is clear that this is modeled on the idea of pagan gods as governing particular spheres of the mental and material world. But Tolkien has demoted their importance, has taken gods and made of them Christian angels. Behind and above these gods of Middle-earth, who reside in the land of the West, cognate with the Blessed Isles, is Ilúvatar, whose name means the All-Father, very, very similar to a name given to Odin, and to the Gaelic Dagda, who is also called Ol-Ather in Old Gaelic pronunciation. He is Tolkien's version of the Christian god. It is said in the Book of Lost Tales, "Was he of the gods?" "Nay," said Rúmil, "that he was not, for he made them. Ilúvatar is the Lord for always, who dwells beyond the world, who made it, and is not of it, nor in it, but loves it." The phrasing is very Christian, and the idea of a god who exists outside of the world is not a pagan conception. The world is being, and there is, in the pagan view, nothing outside of being, nor is being causally dependent on anything. The Valar, though with functions and descriptions reminiscent of pagan gods, are theologically akin to angels in Tolkien's mythology. In the chapter The Ride of the Rohirrim, it says, "Fey he seemed, or the battle fury of his fathers ran like new fire in his veins, and he was borne up on Snowmane like a god of old, even as Orome the Great in the battle of the Valar when the world was young." It's in my view, purely speculation, that Eru Ilúvatar, the creation myth, and the idea of the Valar gods wasn't just a creative exercise, but how, in his own heart, he believed the world to be. Though Catholic, he was intensely interested in ancient European beliefs, and he may have believed, as some Irish Christians in the Middle Ages, that the pagan gods of Europe had come from a true source, not different from the musings of God by the Hebrews. In the Lord of the Rings lore, he created what was, in his view, a true account of God that stood outside of cultural and historical prisons of Christian doctrine. He tempers this pagan side, however, by forbidding their worship, just as Christians forbid the worship of angels or saints. Doing so has the practical effect of making the world seem almost godless, as Eru Ilúvatar is also not worshipped directly. Thus, there is no active spiritual practice of any kind in Lord of the Rings, which is very odd given its setting and theme. This seems to be born out of Tolkien's Christian reservations of promoting any kind of religion that wasn't explicitly Christian. The times when spirits or gods are invoked for aid are mysterious and never fully explained, often being in Elvish and described as the characters speaking without even understanding what they are saying. Such times like in Shelob's lair, Frodo and Sam are aided, but it's never explicit. As a Christian, he could not promote the worship of angelic beings, and thus Lord of the Rings suffers a true sense of religion, which could have added even further depth to the world. Now, this Christian influence can be seen clearly in the tale of Morgoth, or Melkor. He was the most powerful of the Ainur created by Ilúvatar, but he disrupted the music of the Ainur, and is the metaphysical origin of evil, that which disrupts or goes against the harmony established by God. It's easy to see that this is the direct copy of the Christian account of Lucifer, the fallen angel who becomes Satan. This idea was brought into Christianity from Zoroastrianism, which was based on an older Indo-European paganism. Just like in all Indo-European pagan myths, Morgoth is defeated by the forces of the Valar and chained in the abyss. A prophecy holds that one day Morgoth will break from his chains and will finally be defeated in the Great Last Battle, an event much akin to Ragnarok or the Christian end times. Yet one of Morgoth's lieutenants survived the great battle and continued to spread evil and darkness in the world, Sauron. He was a Maya and a student of the Vala Aula, the craftsman god of the earth. Disguised as Anatar, he deceives the elves and crafted the rings of power. When his body was destroyed by Elendil and Gil-galad, his immortal spirit persisted, and with its power fused into the ring, he could gradually rebuild his strength. His symbol then became the Eye of Sauron, the evil eye, the malign force that seeks out and curses that which its gaze falls upon. When Sauron's ring, into which he poured so much of his power, was destroyed, he became only a powerless phantom, no longer able to manifest himself in Middle-earth, drifting eventually down into the abyss where his master was chained. Now, one catches a glimpse of the idea of the evil creator, the demiurge, in the notion of Sauron being a spirit originally devoted to creation. His impulse was to control and order things, but that desire eventually led him to seek domination and absolute power. In this, he was different from his master Morgoth, who sought to unmake, to corrupt, and destroy. Yet eventually that power, that desire for control, led to evil ends. And it is this power of control and domination which the One Ring represents. And of all the elements of the Lord of the Rings, its tale is perhaps the most Christian. Many theories have been discussed about Tolkien's inspiration for the ring. In recent years, some have linked the ring to etymological work Tolkien did in association with Mortimer Wheeler on the name of Nodens, to which a dedication was made, seeking a ring that was stolen. This may have provided some inspiration for the idea of the ring and a sinister force seeking it. However, philosophically, the myth of the Ring of Giges, told by Plato in the Republic, that was the foundation for the concept of the ring's power. Glaucon, Plato's older brother, wondered if any man could be so good as to resist the temptation to do unjust acts, if he could do so without risk of detection. Suppose now that there were two such magic rings, and the just put one of them on, and the unjust the other. No man can be imagined to be of such an iron nature, that he would stand fast in justice. No man would keep his hand off what was not his own, when he could safely take what he liked out of the market, and lie with anyone at his pleasure, or kill or release from prison whom he would, and in all respects be like a god among men. Then the actions of the just would be as the actions of the unjust. They would both come at last to the same point, and this we may truly affirm to be a great proof that a man is just, not willingly or because he thinks that justice is any good to him individually, but of necessity. For wherever anyone thinks that he can safely be unjust, there he is unjust. For all men believe in their hearts that injustice is far more profitable to the individual than justice, and he who argues as I have been supposing will say that they are right. If you could imagine anyone abstaining this power of becoming invisible and never doing any wrong or touching what was another's, he would be thought by the onlookers to be the most wretched idiot, although they would praise him to one another's faces, and keep up appearances with one another from a fear that they too might suffer injustice. It seems that this problem of morality and power was of central concern to Tolkien. Plato had a clever response to this criticism of justice as an artificial social outgrowth. He held that any man who submitted to the power of the ring of Gyges was not the better off, but had in fact enslaved himself to his desires, and would not lead the better life for it. Taken in a Christian context, the enslavement to one's desires is the enslavement to the evil one, who seeks to seduce and corrupt men's souls. The ring of Gyges becomes the one ring to rule them all, worldly power. It was this same desire that corrupted Sauron to begin with, the desire for worldly power, the power to control and order as he would, is the basis for his turn to evil. Of the ring's power over people, Gandalf tells Frodo, "And if he often use the ring to make himself invisible, he fades. He becomes in the end invisible permanently, and walks in the twilight under the eye of the dark power that rules the rings. Yet sooner or later if he is strong and well-meaning to begin with, but neither strength nor good purpose will last. Sooner or later, the dark power will devour him." The evil one, through the temptation of the power of the ring, corrupts its holder. If he is well-meaning, he can resist this corruption for a while, but eventually he will fall into darkness and be ruled by the evil one. That Sauron is called the Dark Power also shows he was thought of as a demonic force manifest in the world. Gandalf says, "There is only one power in this world that knows all about the rings and their effects." Power here refers to a spirit entity, in this case Sauron. In the ancient lore, the war between the Valar and Morgoth is called the War of the Powers, and this idea of power is used by Tolkien to denote forces which pagans would call gods, but which Christians call angels, demons, or powers. Just so the rings are called rings of power, and the One Ring is the ring which is master of all other rings given to the kings of the races of Middle-earth. The One Ring is the absolute ruler of that worldly power of the kings, which in Christian theology is ruled by Satan. The ring is perilous precisely through the temptation to exercise its power, and the eventual effects that doing so has on the person. Of it, Gandalf says, "With that power I should have power too great and terrible, and over me the ring would gain a power still greater and more deadly. Do not tempt me, for I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself. Yet the way of the ring to my heart is through pity. Pity for weakness and the desire of strength to do good. Do not tempt me. I dare not take it, not even to keep it safe, unused. The wish to wield it would be too great for my strength. I shall have such need of it. Great perils lie before me." Sauron fell into darkness through the desire to gain power and control. This is what Gandalf himself fears. The power of the ring would enable him to do great things, but would eventually corrupt him, gaining control over him as he succumbed to his desires, much like the ring of Gyges becomes the enslaver of its wearer, according to Plato. It is the temptation of power which is too powerful for any to endure, even Gandalf, not the will of Sauron. Of it, Elrond says, "Its strength, Boromir, is too great for anyone to wield at will, save only those who have already a great power of their own. But for them it holds an even deadlier peril. The very desire of it corrupts the heart. Consider Saruman. If any of the wise should with this ring overthrow the Lord of Mordor, using his own arts, he would then set himself upon Sauron's throne, and yet another Dark Lord would appear, and that is another reason why the ring should be destroyed. As long as it is in the world, it will be a danger even to the wise, for nothing is evil in the beginning, even Sauron was not so. The ring's work is slow upon Bilbo and Frodo, and the reason is often said to be related to the nature of hobbits. They are simple folk. Neither Bilbo or Frodo have ambitions to be mighty rulers or desire after worldly things. In fact, not even families, as neither of them take a wife, akin to a Catholic priest. As they do not desire such things, their temptation is less. Yet even they are very reluctant to give it up once they have it. Another factor that signals Lord of the Rings is a Christian-inspired story is the characterization of the heroes. The heroes of old were noble but violent warriors who sought glory, honor, victory, and power. In The Lord of the Rings, that archetype is expressed through Boromir, and as he was played by Sean Bean, everyone knows how it ends. His brother Faramir said of him, "For as the Rohirrim do, we now love war and valor as things good in themselves, both as sport and an end. And though we still hold that a warrior should have more skill and knowledge than only the craft of weapons and slaying, we esteem a warrior nonetheless above men of other crafts. Such is the need of our days. So even was my brother, Boromir, a man of prowess, and for that he was accounted the best man in Gondor, and very valiant indeed he was. No heir of Minas Tirith has for long years been so hardy in toil, so onward into battle, or blown a mightier note on the great horn." From the start, Boromir thinks the idea of bringing the ring to Mount Doom a folly. In the council he declared, "Why do you speak ever of hiding and destroying? Why should we not think that the great ring has come into our hands to serve us in our very hour of need? Wielding it, the free lords of the free may surely defeat the enemy. That is what he most fears, I deem. Valor needs first strength, and then a weapon. Let the ring be your weapon, if it has such power as you say. Take it and go forth to victory." It is true that Sauron fears them finding and using the ring against him. Gandalf admits this. It is the common sense that would have been spoken by any hero of the past. In fact, the typical legend involves the hero seeking to acquire a powerful magical artifact so that he can use it against the enemy. He's turning the historical archetype of the hero quest on its head. Instead of acquiring a powerful magical artifact in order to defeat a monster, the quest is to destroy one that they already have, which, if used, would give them potentially the power to destroy their adversary. That Boromir goes along with this at all is a testament to his nobility, for the entire premise relies on the assumption that using the ring, even if it led to victory over Sauron, would somehow not change anything. Both Gandalf and Elrond say the power of the ring is feared because of their own susceptibility to corruption. Boromir could not accept this fundamentally Christian idea of the fatalistic view of human corruptibility that comes from the Christian view of the fallen nature of man. Aragorn, of course, is a mighty warrior, but his motivations are cleansed of pagan ferocity. He accepts that he must fight, but he does not relish it, and avoids it when he can. He seeks to become king not because he wants power, but because it is his duty as the heir of Elendil, and part of the prophecy. Unlike Boromir, he accepts the fundamental premise laid out by Elrond and Gandalf, and as he does not seek for glory or power greater than what he possesses, he is not tempted by the ring. He is not only a warrior, but skilled in many things, from ancient lore to herbcraft, and represents the ideal figure of the king, an ideal that preceded Christianity, even though he is fit to work within its bounds. He heeds the advice of the wise, he seeks for moderation, he has a strong hand and mind, but does not seek to quarrel. He resists sleep and is always vigilant, always adhering to truth. This is the model of Aragorn, one which transcends the differences between paganism and Christianity. Yet it is not actually Aragorn who is the central hero, of Lord of the Rings. Frodo is not the type of hero in medieval adventures or ancient epics. He is not a noble, not a warrior, not a wizard, not even a good bard like Bilbo. He actually has very few notable skills. Even in tales where the hero begins in a rather mundane role, they typically gain some special powers or become strong warriors. Their secret royal lineage is revealed. This does not happen to Frodo. What we do learn is of a prophecy concerning the ring and a halfling, that Frodo's mission is fated in some way, predestined. Seek for the sword that was broken. In Imladris it dwells. There shall be counsels taken, stronger than Morgul's spells. There shall be drawn a token, that doom is near at hand. For Isildur's bane shall waken, and the halfling forth shall stand. Though never explicitly stated in the book, the coming of the ring to Bilbo and the quest of Frodo, arranged through seeming chance, happens by the will of Ilúvatar, the All-Father. It is he who meant Bilbo to have the ring, and set the events in motion. Frodo has accepted this fate, though he is certain that he will die at or before the end of the quest. He is up against forces that he has no way of fighting, but he presses on, weighted down by the ring which he wears around his neck, the ring which he is sure will bring about his doom. It is possible to replace Frodo's ring, dangling from a chain around his neck, with the crucifix. Jesus was forced to bear the cross through the streets, carrying the weight of his own doom upon him. Frodo bears the weight of the ring, heading ever to Mount Doom, where he expects to die, even if he can make it there. And bearing the great temptation of worldly power around his neck, he chooses to destroy it and liberates the world from the Dark Lord. He destroys the ring on March 25th. Twice in every 100 years, Easter will fall on March 25th. To be clear, Tolkien was not trying to equate Frodo and Jesus, but he does seem to have had in mind a Christ-like mission, and Frodo is primarily inspired by this idea. He is not Christ, but one trying to act as Christ, the humble Christian bearing his cross, trying to resist temptation, trying to do the right thing in the face of fear and overwhelming odds. Even if he never lives to be praised or rewarded, even if one never learns what he did or tried to do. Yet in the final decisive moment, Frodo fails. He fails because he is not Christ. He is a mortal, striving to do the impossible, but whose will alone cannot avoid falling into sin. Christian doctrine is absolute on this question. The mortal man cannot, of his own will, overcome sin. To believe so is to fall into the Pelagian heresy, the famous Celtic Christian monk of the 4th century, who maintained that pagans could also be good men and avoid sin through living good lives. Christian doctrine since that time has insisted that it is only through the grace of God that one is able to overcome sin. Frodo, as a mortal, could not overcome the power of the ring and destroy it on his own. Thus enters Smeagol. A hobbit-like creature, Smeagol is the dark shadow of Frodo, the Frodo that might be, should he succumb to the ring. Gandalf says, "I think it a sad story, and it might have happened to others, even to some hobbits that I have known." Yet from the outset it is clear that Smeagol's fate, no less than Frodo's, is connected to the ring.
What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had the chance.
Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy, not to strike without need. And he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil and escaped in the end, because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity.
I can't understand you. Do you mean to say that you and the elves have let him live on after all these horrible deeds? Now at any rate he is as bad as any orc, and just an enemy. He deserves death.
Deserves it? I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends. I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it, and he is bound up with the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part to play in this yet, for good or ill, before the end. And when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not the least. Frodo is no more able to overcome the ring than Isildur. His salvation must come through the grace of God, through mercy, and that grace, that chance, works through Smeagol. Numerous times Gollum could have been killed, but was spared. Even just as they were climbing Mount Doom, Sam, who had intended to kill him, suddenly took pity on him and had mercy. That mercy ruled the fate of the world. In some way, he is a test of their piety. As in a number of other critical cases in the tale, chance has it that when Smeagol finally obtains the ring, he stumbles, perhaps the only time in the entire book that the extremely agile Gollum does so, and he falls down into the fires of Mount Doom. This chance is no chance at all, but the grace of God, through which, and only through which, man can be delivered and the ring destroyed. In the end, Frodo says of Smeagol,
"Do you remember Gandalf's words? Even Gollum may have something yet to do. But for him, Sam, I could not have destroyed the ring. The quest would have been in vain, even at the bitter end. So let us forgive him. For the quest is achieved, and now all is over. I am glad you are here with me. Here at the end of all things, Sam."
In the end, Frodo, Bilbo, Gandalf, and the elves leave Middle-earth by a ship into the west. That western land beyond the sea is inspired by the old Indo-European idea of the paradise in the west, known by all European traditions, but is made synonymous with the Christian heaven. The Valar and the Maiar reside there, and the ring-bearers have earned their place among them. Leading up to this departure, it is clearly intended to symbolize the death of Frodo and Bilbo. Frodo is described as inflicted by some illness brought about by the Nazgul wound, and Bilbo is extremely old and fading fast. Slowly the ship slipped away down the long grey firth, and the light of the glass of Galadriel that Frodo bore glimmered and was lost, and the ship went out into the high sea and passed on into the west, until at last, on a night of rain, Frodo smelled a sweet fragrance on the air, and heard the sound of singing that came over the water. And then it seemed to him that, as in his dream, in the house of Bombadil, the grey rain curtain turned all to silver glass, and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores, and beyond them a far green country under a swift sunrise. The question we began this exploration with is difficult to answer. It could be argued that The Lord of the Rings is a Christian work that has the appearance of paganism due to its use of ancient European lore, and the substitution of Christian terms and dogma. Perhaps it's a glimmer of how Christianity might look if it were actually centered in European traditions, as Zoroastrianism is to the ancient Iranian beliefs. Yet as Christ is not present, only his model suggested, it isn't strictly speaking Christian, despite many elements infused or based on Christian beliefs. Inspired by ancient European lore, with a Christian philosophy, creating something that is not strictly one or the other. Yet he has done so with such skill that many do not even realize the significant religious themes within. Well, I hope you found this interesting, and if you did, please like, subscribe, and share, and consider supporting me through Patreon or PayPal. Your support is greatly appreciated, and as always, stand tall.